Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Men for Life podcast. This is Sean Corcoran, the CEO of Men for Life. I'm joined today by AJ Hurley, the National Outreach Director for the White Rose. What's up, AJ?
How's it going, brother? Good to see you, Sean.
It's good to see you, too. I'm really excited to have you join me.
This is long overdue, man.
I agree, but I think God's timing. I think
Amen.
that we're doing this at the right time, because instead of just having, I hate to say it, a generic interview, but instead of having just an interview about, who you are and the work you do, we can actually have a real conversation that I think is on people's hearts right now in the pro-life movement, in every area of the pro-life movement.
Absolutely.
And so what I'm doing right now is a series called What Should the Pro-Life Movement Want? It kind of stemmed from an idea that I got after Abby Johnson started posting videos around the middle of February or January, the middle of January, sorry, calling people out and laying out her position. And I think that her following being so big, it kind of led to a lot of questions. Then I went to Life or Death Con. I got to see Abby speak in person. I got to see you and Seth speak in person. And then I saw Abby again at the Pro-Life Summit, and I think, and then at the March for Life, when I was backstage with the coalition, there was a lot of conversations about that going on amongst the other pro-life leaders. And so, but I think amongst the people who are not, backstage at these events, there's a lot of questions going on. And so the question that I have is, what should the pro-life movement want? We've got abolitionists, we've got incrementalists, we've got the pro-life establishment, the pro-life industrial complex, whatever people want to call stuff, the pregnancy centers, all the people in between. And what are we working towards? Because my belief is that everyone in the pro-life movement wants to end abortion, but that they disagree on how to get there.
Yep.
And so, what I'd like to do is figure out a way to have these conversations and put it all on the table to see if there's a way that we can start to move forward together. I posted a video today, and I basically in this video said, if you're in the pro-life movement and you find yourself sitting on the same side as Planned Parenthood in opposition of any other pro-life bill, then you really have to ask yourself why you're sitting there.
Amen.
Because Planned Parenthood is evil. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We should be working at least not in opposition of each other.
Totally.
And so to put all that out there, I'm going to give you my position, and then we'll jump into, you'll kind of run the rest of the conversation. So
Cool.
So my position as it stands today is that a couple of things. I know you used this example before, and I think that it's a really important one. I use it every day. If we believe that the baby in the womb has the same dignity and value as the baby outside of the womb, and we believe that a mother who drowns a newborn should face legal consequences, then at some point we have to say that that baby in the womb deserves the same rights as the baby outside of the womb, even if that means that there may be consequences to the mother. However, I also believe that today, as we sit here, 53 years of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry using very good messaging, which we have to agree, I hope, is good messaging. Otherwise, we wouldn't be fighting this fight. Very good messaging to say it's not a baby, it's not a baby, it's not a baby, it's not a baby. I do not believe that every woman is a victim. I do not believe that no women are victims. I think that there is a mix that goes in there.
Yep.
And so my position is that we should be moving towards a point where the child in the womb has the exact same rights as the child outside of the womb, regardless of what that means to everyone else, but that we're not there yet today. So that can't be an excuse, right? The messaging of Planned Parenthood for 53 years can't be an excuse for us to be saying in 20 years, well, Planned Parenthood's had really good messaging for 73 years, or in 90, in 20, 40 years to say, well, it's just hard because Planned Parenthood's had really good messaging for 93 years. Like it's a problem that we have to solve, not an excuse that we can't work through. And so we have to get to that point. Otherwise, I don't know what we're fighting for. So that's my position as we sit here today. And I think that what we talked about before we started recording was clearing up confusion about what it means, what you mean, definition of terms, abolitionist.
Yeah.
Where this comes from is at Life or Death Con, I heard you say, I heard Seth say that you are not abolitionists, you do not agree with the abolitionists, you do not want to work with the abolitionists. And then everything that you said after that and everything that he said after that, in my mind, as I understood it, was what the abolitionists believe. Seth then put out some videos last week, I think, today's Tuesday, so last week, where he said the same thing. He said, I'm not an abolitionist, I don't want to work with the abolitionists, I disagree with the abolitionists. But then the other things that he said are what I understood, and I received messages from other people who had the same confusion to be the abolitionist position. So if you can tell us, kind of define that term abolitionist for us, so that we can then understand when you're saying I'm not an abolitionist.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually really helpful. I think there is, and even after this conversation, I think there is going to be a lot of misunderstanding. It's impossible to get these ideas into everybody's heads, especially, when each side is putting forth their ideas with a certain narrative and a certain amount of talking points in reference to it, right? So when Seth and I say that I don't want to speak for Seth necessarily, but I could pretty much tell you where he and I stand on this, is we are not abolitionists. Proper. It's funny because, I want to abolish abortion. Does that make me an abolitionist? Maybe. So if that's what abolitionist means, then count me in.
But it's not, because I want to abolish abortion.
Exactly.
And I believe that everyone in the pro-life movement who is working in good faith wants to abolish abortion.
Yes.
So they've kind of taken this term and hijacked it to mean something specific that I think isn't clear.
Absolutely. So the abolitionist perspective, and you can get this from Abolitionist Rising. They've done a few brand changes over the years. They used to be called Free the States. It was Abolish Human Abortion before that. These guys hate us, literally hate us. They have whole episodes on each one of us, from Jason Storms to myself to Seth Gruber, just vicious attacks. I've blocked all these people. I ignore all these people. They're not worth your time. They're not worth your energy. And so they have, if you go to their website, they have something called the Norman Statement, and they have all their principles laid out. So abolitionists, according to the abolitionists, and unfortunately, most of their followers don't even know what abolitionism means. And you'll see it sometimes, people in real time interacting, commenting on wait, I thought I was an abolitionist, but I guess I'm not an abolitionist, because they'll be reacting to Seth or I and our content. Whereas, like, look, if I could get a heartbeat bill passed in New York, I'm going to vote for that. Right. I'm going to do the best we can do. So, abolitionists in their mind means not only criminalizing abortion as murder, as homicide, with the same laws that protect preborn children as you and I have, but also they will take no incremental steps along the way, right? So if in New York City there was a law that a life at conception ban but didn't prosecute mothers, or if there was a heartbeat bill and didn't sanction, didn't protect babies without heartbeats, they are against any incremental progresses that they would see as unjust. And so where they get that is from several Bible verses where they will acquire their philosophical understanding as to how they should, how they've been biblically sanctioned by God to fight evil and reform society. They will point to Isaiah, where it says, "Woe to you who decree iniquitous decrees. Justice and only justice shall you pursue." They will cite all of these laws and basically say, okay, if any part of the bill is unjust, meaning if the bill even indirectly says babies without heartbeats can't be protected right now, and this is the best we can get, they will say that is an evil and iniquitous decree. God tells us don't pass evil, iniquitous decrees. So any forms of unjust incrementalism along the way are therefore evil and are not a viable moral option for the Christian to engage in, to vote for, to put forth. So I differ. I believe that all biblical, like all social reform in an evil world, you have to work with the system. And it's actually not me who's sanctioning the death of children without heartbeats. If I vote for a heartbeat bill in some case, it's the law. The law already is protecting the abortion industry from killing all babies. So if I put a heartbeat bill in California or Illinois, I'm not saying I'm sanctioning the death of babies without heartbeats. I'm saying the law already is sanctioning every death of every child. I'm simply giving protections to preborn children with heartbeats because that's the best we can do. And the examples I'll give for this is like, man, heaven forbid we lived in a day and age where all forms of illicit sexual material on the internet, regardless whether it be adult sexual material or children, heaven forbid we lived in an age. But just say, for example's sake, say we lived in America where all that was completely legal. And if we had a bill just to say, hey, let's get rid of the legal sexual exploitation of children, but it didn't get rid of all types of pornography, of adult pornography, I would, nobody in their right mind, and I believe not even these abolitionists, would say that's evil, that's unjust weights and measures, that's an iniquitous decree because you're not getting rid of all pornography. We would all, and here's the facts of the matter, is if you applied these standards to all forms of social engagement and social reform, we wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. First Samuel, I believe chapter 1 says, if you ask, God says, if you ask a king to rule over you, then he's going to take your sons and daughters to war and he's going to tax you 1/10, right? None of these guys, if you add up all the taxes right now, Sean, we're being taxed probably up to 50% of our income when we're adding everything up. If we could consolidate that all to 11 or 12%, I can guarantee you none of these guys, even the abolitionists, would get up and say, I can't do that because God's word says 1/10 is judgment. So anything less than, nobody would say that.
Right.
But for some reason, they resort to, in my view, special pleading with the area of this one issue, whereas it's all or nothing. And if you can't save every single one of the babies from conception and treat it equally as murder, as if killing any other human being, you are doing evil, right? They can't, there's no category for doing anything less in their mind. So that is why I would say I'm not an abolitionist. I will take the best steps along the way. And I think part of what's created this movement of far-right abolitionism is not necessarily a prudential, biblically literate understanding of applying God's word to social reform and saying, how do we best do this? I think what they're reacting to is a lot of compromise that they've seen for the last 50 years in the GOP and the pro-life establishment, whereas it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, and they're putting forth bills that actually just don't do anything so that, we can go back to our donors and say, hey, we did a great job. Now I'm maybe impugning the motives there, which I don't have access to people's motives. I want to be very careful about that. I don't want to say, oh, the pro-life industry is doing this for money. I don't know that. But all I can do is say is there has been a lot of compromise in the GOP. and in establishment groups for a long time. And we're seeing that come to fruition right now at the local level. And so these people are trying to shift the Overton window by bringing us back to our first principles as a movement and saying, what is it we're fighting for? You know, I started my talk at Life or Death Con simply by saying, like, imagine fighting a war, or imagine running a race and you don't know where the finish line is. Imagine fighting a battle and you actually don't know what it means that you've won. And I think there is a identity crisis right now in the pro-life movement, whereas we can't unify because we don't know what it means to actually end abortion. We have not unified as to what that looks like. You have national organizations that will go unnamed that have outright admitted we will never, ever in the future even give legal children the same rights and protections that born children have, because that would require us to make it a crime for all parties involved, including the mother. And so that is a foundational issue that we do not have alignment on. We have no clear view of what the finish line looks like, and it's being reflected.
Can I just make sure that that's really clear what you just said?
Yeah.
So I will name National Right to Life only because of the interview that you did with Ray with the Life Issues Institute, where he said these things.
Totally.
And I'll link that interview. I'll also link the Norman. You said the Norman principles.
The Norman statement. Yeah.
The Norman statement in the show notes. But I'll link that interview with Ray because I'm not trying to throw anybody in the bus. I've never spoken to Ray, but I did listen to that interview. And he did say, when pressed, that he does not see any time in the future where National Right to Life will support equal protection if it means that mom can be criminalized.
Yeah.
Which I think is what you just said, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Totally. And let me just say a few things
And
here.
then when asked, well, what does equal protection look like? I'm not certain that a good answer was given. So I don't know how you get equal protection.
Yeah, and
equal
look,
protection.
this isn't me picking on Ray. I love Ray. I mean, that guy is a hero. He's literally, I mean, he rescued. He peacefully put his body in front of an abortion clinic and accepted arrest. That's how devoted he is to protecting preborn children. That guy is a hero, right? Now, we differ fundamentally on this,
Right.
and I would say that his views are very inconsistent, but he is not my enemy. Right.
And I don't mean to name him to throw him under the bus either.
I didn't think you did. I just want to say that because, you know, when we have these conversations and, you know, whether it's publicly in a format like Life or Death Con, and we have like a lot of mud gets thrown, and I just want to make sure that like everybody left, right, and center knows that like this is not personal. I am not about impugning your motives or attacking your character. We at White Rose Resistance are not about, you know, trying to throw other organizations under the bus and say they're not pro-life enough or they're not this or that. At the end of the day, I think I want to do one thing. We want to do one thing. We want to protect babies.
Yeah.
And I am thoroughly convinced that it is literally impossible to create a culture of life when we have a fundamental, foundational principle that creates a culture where preborn children are not seen as valuable, are seen as second-class victims, where we have taught little girls from the time that they are in infancy that preborn children are not worthy of equal protection and equal rights because our very laws exempt a special class of sanctioned killing. And so that is a fundamental principle that I think is so necessary if we are going to fight that. Now, the question is this, Sean, why now? Like I heard you talk about there's principles here of like, you're either like, okay, national rights to life on one side, prosecute never. I'm like, prosecute now. You're like, prosecute later, right? And to a certain degree, I
believe that we need to set a foundation, but I also believe that I'm clear on what that foundation is. And while I don't have the answer, I believe that the solution is to have a timeline that is not indefinite.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids fighting. Like, I'll tell you, the one thing that Abby said, some of the things she said I disagreed with, some of the things she said I agreed with. The one thing that she said that struck me, AJ, was, I don't want to end abortion in 20 years. I want to end abortion today.
Amen.
And just an hour before that, I had given a presentation at the Pro-Life Advocates Conference where, like I have in every other presentation I've given or speech that I've given, I pointed out my 11-year-old son and indicated that, as the work we do in Men for Life is important because if men lead, we can change the culture so that the next generation, is how I put it, sees abortion as unthinkable and can end abortion. And when I heard Abby say that, I realized I'm being short-sighted. Like I'm putting it on my kids, right? And that's not the way to go. So the reason I fall in the middle is because I do agree that there's a foundation. I don't agree that that lack of foundation is an excuse to kick the can forever. I think we have to set it up. But I'm sorry. I just
no, totally
lay
good.
that out
I love that. And I think so.
I'm not just playing the fence. Like it's really important. Like, I'm not sitting on the fence, because I don't want to make a decision. Like, I have a decision, and it requires a solution. It's just a decision that's in the middle.
So I want to address why I'm saying now, right? Why we need to get there now. But before I do, I just want to frame this a little bit because I do not agree with the way that this is being framed. This is not about prosecuting women. No, if heaven forbid we made a law that said it should be illegal to drown your toddler in a bathtub, it would be a very dishonest framing to say you want to prosecute moms.
Right.
Right. That would be a very dishonest and a very just a horrible way to frame that. No, I want to protect toddlers, no matter who sanctions their death, no matter who drowns them in a bathtub. And the problem right now,
but I don't want people drowning them. Right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone drowning them. And I don't want anyone to go to jail for drowning their toddler. Right? And actually how we ensure that is that the three functions of the law actually are allowed to have their effect. What are the three functions of the law? The law is a deterrent. The law punishes evil behavior. And the law teaches. We know that as Christians, the law, God gave us the law, the civil government, Romans 13, to bear the sword as a terror for bad behavior, right? That's a deterrent. It should be a terror for people to kill child, to sexually exploit a child, to do these things, to violate the image of God and do unspeakable things to the human person, because we value them. So people who do those things should be terrified because the law actually is a deterrent to bad behavior. Also, they bear their sword, according to Romans 13, and says, as God's deacon avenging, right? So, and look, I didn't say that. God said that, right? So that minister of justice, that deacon of justice, God is put civil magistrates in place to actually punish evil behavior. And the third thing is it actually champions the value and dignity of children. So if we say preborn children are protected against murder And then we have this huge carve out if you happen to be biologically related to them and if you're a female. We're teaching society where on one hand we're saying children have equal rights, and on the other hand we're teaching society that preborn children are second-class citizens and it should be legal to kill them. So that fundamentally and foundationally is a huge problem if we want to create a culture of life. Because do you think, man, after 50 years of full-on legal sanctioned child killing in America, do you think that that might have some effect on how young women see preborn children?
100%.
And so I think that as a movement, we have to just put this in proper perspective. So, how in the world did we fight previous injustices? So, we can so get caught up in the moment and not kind of take this 30,000 foot step back and just see, hey, am I being consistent here? So, 150 years ago, we bravely and boldly passed the 13th and 14th Amendments. And what we didn't say when we had the power to free image bearers of God that had a different color skin, what we didn't say is, let me put my finger up to the cultural tides. Is culture ready for this? We didn't say, oh, wow, the majority of black Southerners in the States are completely hell set on setting people free. They had a whole culture from their very infancy in the Americas for 250 years on this soil. We were raised in a culture that from the very moment that you came out the womb and could understand how life works, you were taught that black people were second-class citizens. Yet none of that mattered when we had the ability to stand on God's principles and the foundational principles of our Declaration of Independence that said we hold these truths, and the Fifth Amendment, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men created equal, endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. These are self-evident things, according to the Declaration, that all men are created and have the right to life. The very first thing. The Fifth Amendment, no person shall be deprived of life or liberty without due process of law. And what they didn't do is look around and say, do we have the hearts and minds of the South? No. They made it, they said, you will free your slaves. You will not subjugate human beings anymore. And the law will establish this God-given, self-evident reality that these human beings are equal, that they are made in God's image, and the law will uphold their dignity. And what happened? We no longer live in a nation that sees human beings as second class just because of the color of their skin. So it's so, we always hear Andrew Breitbart's classic line, politics is downstream of culture. But we never think that the opposite is also true. And the perfect example I'll give to you is just this. Obergefell was thrusted on the minds of hearts of American people 10 years ago. Obergefell was the Supreme Court decision that made same-sex marriages legal, right? So the Supreme Court forced the states to marry gay people. At the time that this happened, they polled Americans in the most conservative or liberal, depending on how you put it. Every single polling said that at least 70 to 80% of Americans were against gay marriage. what happened? We enshrined it in law. We forced the states to do that. And now 10 years, not even 10 years later, there is hardly a single Republican elected official that would tell you that they oppose it. They wouldn't even tell you, oh, it should be a states' rights decision. Why? Because the law is a tutor. It has an effect on culture. And so don't talk to me about we need to change the culture and make abortion unthinkable. If we are unwilling to have the law do its work as a tutor and underscore the dignity and the rights that our nation is explicitly said is due these children. It's that simple.
Okay. All right. So, so a couple of things on that, and I think we'll have to attack them each individually. But the first is going to be, that the Supreme Court was really clear in Dobbs that it was going to give this to the state. I think it's said somewhere around 19 times.
Let me push back on that a little bit. Yeah, can I?
Please.
This is a common misunderstanding, and I understand where it's coming from. It actually didn't. And it actually said the decision to regulate abortion has been returned to the people and their elected representatives.
That is what I meant to say, and I apologize.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so there is a federal role. All elected representatives, both federal and state.
Yep.
But you're right. The leash has been let go. So federal representative, there is a federal role in protecting life, and I believe we need to get there eventually. But right now, you're right. The states have this unleashed power to either end it or enshrine it in their state constitutions.
Okay. And so then if we look at it from the states, right? And let's go to Iowa. Because I think did it just get presented in Iowa?
Yeah, I think this weekend I was actually in South Dakota 4 days ago, and a bill that would have given the same rights to toddlers to preborn children was killed by the pro-life establishment there.
Okay. Can we go to South Carolina? Because
sure.
I'm going to use some geography, and I don't know where Iowa is on the map. So, I know it's in the middle, but I don't know what's around it. So, So let's say that the bill that's in South Carolina passes. Okay. Is that one still on the table? I know South Dakota failed.
No, that got killed. Actually, it wasn't an equal protection bill, by the way. It was there was one, but we got behind a bill from Senator Cash there, Richard Cash, that made abortion its own separate crime and up to 30 years. No one would ever get that. There's no way, but up to 30 years in jail for killing a child in egregious circumstances. But most women could get probably realistically up to probably 10, if that. I don't even know if a judge would give that, but yeah.
So let's just go with South Carolina just for the purpose of the example then. Let's say that a bill passed in South Carolina. Okay, an equal protection bill. What happens if mom goes to Virginia and gets the abortion pill or has an abortion?
If the bill passed, yeah, it would be treated as any other type of homicide, right? So like you can't kill a human being and then flee to another state. But
what if she did it in a state where it's legal?
Yeah, so she could. But so there's
between that's the crazy thing about the situation we're in right now, right? Mm-hmm. Is that if it's going to the states, then what happens if someone just goes to a state where it's legal? I won't even get into like going to Canada or going to Mexico. Like let's just play within the United States.
Yep. Yeah.
So how do we prosecute?
She would. There would be a massive prosecution, like an enforcement problem there. They probably would not be able to prosecute her.
Okay.
As at the end of the day, yeah, it would probably not. Actually, it's funny because in most cases, I actually think most abortions would probably not be prosecuted.
Right.
I don't think a judge would realistically touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't think
At
we'd
all?
have
You're
this
saying at all?
tyrannical, overarching, overreactive kind of like prosecutorial problem. I
Right.
think we'd have a problem with actually lack of enforcement, and that's why I just think that just the fact that it's illegal
Yeah.
and in the homicide code, just even if it wasn't in the homicide code, even if we passed Richard Cash's bill and it's made its own separate crime,
Right.
just that. I mean, I talked to so many women that said, man, I ask them, would you have had an abortion if it was against the law to do it? And every single one of them, with almost without fail, said, no, I would not have done it.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for her, but Rebecca Kiesling is a good example of the way that she described her own birth. Being that I believe her mom attempted twice, and by attempt I mean showed up on a dark corner. This is when abortion was illegal, before Roe, and that was the reason that she backed out.
Yep.
And so look, that's a really good point, AJ, and I think that it's important. I think you said a couple of important things. The first is that you recognize what is many times put out as the reason that you shouldn't move forward with these bills, which is that they're not going to get prosecuted, right? And you're recognizing the reality that would be very hard to get. There would be an enforcement problem, but that the fact that it's illegal creates an
massive
issue
deterrent.
And I'm gonna simplify it with drinking. Okay, so when I turned 18, Louisiana it was still 18. The only state I think in the country where it was still 18. They turned it to 21 6 months after I turned 18. And so, but like, when it was 18, I mean, I was 14. There was no holding back. Like the stores would sell it to anybody. I was a freshman in high school and just walking into, I was a big freshman, but I was walking into gas stations and buying alcohol. Once it became 21, there became an issue. And it wasn't just an issue of, the stores wouldn't sell it. It was an issue of, well, they're not going to sell it to me, so I'm not going to go buy it. Right. And so, I know the two things are completely separate, but just thinking of how the law is a deterrent, I think is an important thing to think about. I think that the issue that I have is, if we can agree that there's going to be an enforcement issue, what is the purpose of
Great question.
passing the bills?
Yeah. One, it's a deterrent. A woman could face a homicide charge.
Yeah.
Right. Now, a couple things there. Or actually, before I get into that, let me just say this. The second thing is it teaches women that preborn children are valuable, that they are made in God's image, that they are equal human beings. I already belabored that point before. Like, but we can't.
Or are you saying that given enough time, that and look, let me push back on your. Let me use your
Sure.
Obergefell example.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? And we're not like putting our beliefs in anyone else's head, but do you believe that the reason that politicians will not say, "I'm against gay marriage," is because there are zero politicians who are against gay marriage, or because politicians are for getting elected and are fearful of what the electoral base will say?
Well, now they will, but I mean, if you think about this, I mean, you can look at clips of Obama, Biden, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton 10, 15 years ago, they would not dare say that they opposed gay marriage because they feared getting elected. They looked at the common sentiment of the day, and it's not that they opposed it. They all fought for it. I mean, behind the scenes, but it just goes to show you politics is downstream of culture and politics is upstream of culture.
Yeah.
The law and the common sentiment of social programming with things like Will and Grace and TV shows and the media, they both had their cumulative effect to where they changed culture so much that now, outside of maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene and like maybe one or two other GOP talking heads, none of them will dare do it because they fear the people. And so this is what I'm saying is we're always so concerned about just standing up because we have this massive problem in the pro-life movement of fear of losing.
Right.
We're always like, what is the other side going to do? What is the other side going to do? What is the other side going to do? And that's why, and I just realized now I never got to my answering the question, why now?
Yeah.
Well, why now is because we don't have to change hearts and minds in a third of the states of America. In most states, I was just in South Dakota, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. I mean, they are the average sentiment of a pro-life. When I tell them the average, because I have these conversations all the time. When I tell them, did you know that the pro-life movement actually is not for making it a crime for the woman who's pregnant? They're shocked. They're like, I thought you guys believed that preborn children is equal. Like, how in the world would you not make? I thought that's what we're all doing. And so you put so why now is, I'm not saying now in California and, Illinois and New York and Virginia and in Nevada. I'm saying now in the states where we don't have to change the culture, we need to preserve the culture.
Right.
And we cannot allow for another 50 years of the law saying that preborn children can be legally sanctioned as up for a open season on preborn children, provided you're a mom, and then turn around and saying, preborn children have equal rights and dignity, and we need to make abortion unthinkable.
Right. So here is my my take, just to clarify. When I said, I think the time is not now. What I think the solution would be to make abortion illegal, in the sense that you cannot procure an abortion. Right. Make abortion illegal in the sense that, and look, I'm thinking about this nationally because I know that when you're talking about the states you're working with, that's already a thing. But in order for it to be effective, in order for there to be enforcement, in order for there to be, widespread law that makes sense, where you can't just go to Virginia or go to or order it to your mailbox. We have to end that, right? We have to end the procedures. We have to end the medications, and we just have to do away with that, to where it is illegal to get an abortion. If it is illegal to get an abortion, even going back before Roe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that even going back before Roe, moms were not prosecuted.
That's not entirely true. They had laws that were enacted upon quickening, but that had nothing to do with the fact that preborn children weren't seen as equal persons. Actually, I would point to William Blackstone's commentary on legal jurisprudence, which every one of the founders had Blackstone's commentary on the law and their bookstore on their bookshelf. it starts off his whole thing talking about the rights and dignity of preborn children. So the problem was they didn't have scientific advancements then. There was no way of protecting due process if you weren't sure whether a woman was pregnant. So a woman was prosecuted in many states as murder the second that there was quickening in that you could feel the baby stirring in its mother's womb. And so when people point to like first or early trimester things, then babies were not considered, it wasn't because they didn't consider them human beings and equal members of and I would refer you to this on, there's Josh Craddock is a Harvard legal scholar that wrote all of this. And he's the one who put forth Live Action's 14th Amendment resolution that they were fighting for, trying to pass through Congress. But it had nothing to do with them not seeing equal value. It was a simple, like they had no scientific advancements to detect pregnancy in those early days.
Okay. So I think that if we were to make abortion illegal, then it is a crime to get an abortion. At that point, I think the other thing that we have to do, I'm backtracking a little. I think the other thing that we have to do is we have to counter the messaging of Planned Parenthood in the abortion industry for the past 53 years. I don't think that we should say we're going to do it over 53 more years. I think that Planned Parenthood and the first 43 of those years were done without the internet, without the ability to get the messaging out as effectively as we can now. I think that we have the ability now to put out very effective messaging to when we talk about changing the culture. I would reject anyone's idea that, well, they did this for 53 years, it's going to take us at least that much time. I think that's crap. I think that, we can do this, put out the messaging of it, a fetus is a baby. Look, there's so many women on Reddit right now posting pictures of and it's horrible. It's sad, of posting pictures of a baby in their hand and saying, I don't understand. Like, I was told it was going to be a clump of cells. I was told it was going to be a blood clot. I was told it was going to be mucus. This has eyes and toes and fingers and ears and, and hands. Yeah. And they wouldn't be having that reaction.
Yeah.
If they knew it was a baby.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about women as a victim, and I do want to clear this up too, and maybe you can give your insight on this.
Totally.
I always interpreted that as a victim of the societal messaging in the sense of what I just said. I understand from a conversation I had earlier today that can also mean they suffer deeply after abortions. So I think those are two separate issues. So I want to be clear that what I'm referring to is the messaging.
Yeah.
Right. And that there are people who don't believe that it's a baby. And how do we combat that? Because we need to be able to get to the intent, right? In order to get to the criminal intent, right? Like,
yeah. Let me address a few of those things because I think that's really important. So number one, inside of in all of the bills that we put forward, we have a clause that exempts every woman from prosecution if she has been coerced, right? And now the law itself also, and just recognize that the law itself, what does it assume? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty, right? So the law itself assumes the innocence of the party involved here until they can prove without a reasonable doubt that they are in fact guilty of this. And so it's important to say a few things. One, I do believe that the women who have had abortions, a lot of them are victims, right? because one, and that's why I don't believe in retroactive punishment for anyone in reference to abortion, not only because the law explicitly allows it, but then also because our very own laws have told women that the child in the womb is not a human being. And so I think we need to first and fundamentally fix that education problem by making the law reflect the value and dignity of preborn children moving forward. But then also, you are right. Like, just recognize that, like, if I, the clear intention with malice aforethought in taking someone's life is very, very different than if I'm driving my car and I see a human-sized sack of potatoes and I run over that thinking that it, because I don't want to get in an accident, and there was a human being inside and that I killed, that is a very different thing, right? So the law already allows for this gradation of prosecution or no prosecution at all, depending on the intention of the individual in view. And so you are right, and I'm fully in agreement that many of these women probably have no clue. But the solution to that is not to make the whole-scale act of child killing legal. It's actually to correct that problem by, one, educating people through law about the fundamental dignity of preborn children in general, and then two, have the law have its effect on society to where women now are educated and say, look, I mean, perfect example, let's go back 150 years. The law for however long, and it's crazy. This is a thing that happened in our debate with Raymundo from National Right to Life. We had asked the question, wait, so the dad who
I was going to ask you this,
mifepristone in his wife's drink, should he be prosecuted for murder? He says absolutely, and it's like, what? Hold on here. Has he not been a victim of society? Has he not been told his whole life that preborn children are just a clump of cells?
Right.
Has he not been? But you'll give him a murder charge. You'll have the law protect that baby if he did it, but not the mom in Texas in the same state if she was, by the way, 9 months pregnant. Right now, and you'll hear recipe after recipe on Reddit of women well through the third trimester, them doing misoprostol alone abortions, where they're saying, if you're 6 months, 7 months, 8 months pregnant, put misoprostol in your cheek every 2 hours until the baby is delivered. And that, brothers and sisters, is completely legal in Texas. A state that is the most restrictive pro-life laws have been enacted that supposedly protect babies from conception. In a state like Texas, a woman can induce with abortifacient drugs a 8-9 month baby and do it in front of a police officer, and not a single thing is going to happen because there is an explicit clause that says none of this applies if you're a mother of the child.
Yeah, that's a really big deal, and that was the first time that I'd ever heard anyone articulate, hasn't the dad also been indoctrinated? I'm going to use the word indoctrinated. So, and I think that's important because on my social media posts, and I think, it's probably because I come from the standpoint of a man and calling men to action. I get a lot of men who will argue with me about whether it's just a fetus, or it's just a clump of cells. It's not a baby yet, right? So many, it's not a baby yet. It's exhausting having the debate on when the magic of it become a human being becoming a baby is. And it's never a consistent answer. It's always different depending on the person you're talking to. And then it changes if you give them a good response, because
Yeah.
they're really not arguing that. They're arguing for abortion at all points. So yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up, that if we're going to suggest that women have been indoctrinated to the point where in many cases they do not believe that it's a baby. I remember when my son was aborted, this is 29 years ago. And what the mother said to me was exactly the same thing that people are saying now. Okay, so we did have some technical difficulties and we're just jumping back in. So if you noticed a jump in the camera, that's all that was about. What I was talking about was that when the young lady who was pregnant with my first child was telling me that the procedure was simply, clearing off of membrane, is what I remember her saying. That I don't think that it was like hey, I'm going to try to get one by on you, right? It was because I was very clear that I was against this and that it was a baby. It was, I think it was what she believed, and so that kind of gets into what we were already talking about, which is that there are women who believe this, and that the messaging has been effective not only on women and on men. And so if we are going to say that we cannot criminalize women or prosecute women, I'm really trying to stop using the word criminalize, because I feel like it's a term used by Planned Parenthood in the abortion industry, like harmful rhetoric to scare, fear mongering, right? And if we start using it against each other, I think it's dangerous. But prosecute, to prosecute women, if that's better.
Protect babies from everyone.
Right. And so, if we're not going to protect babies from everyone, then how are we justified in protecting the babies from anyone? I guess that's the best way to say that. And so I think that's a really good point that I've never heard before I heard you articulate that. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. So
Can I make one more point on that too?
yeah, please.
So obviously in this, there's three parties involved. We've talked very in-depthly about the rights and protections of the preborn child, but two other parties need to be protected here, right?
Yep.
You have the father and you have a mother. In so many cases, we have a mother who is being coerced by a father. And then in some cases, we have a father, like in your instance, who wants to protect his child. But imagine in Texas, for instance, right now, a father can't protect his child, even in the
Right.
most pro-life state in America. And so this issue is so much always construed as prosecuting the mom. But the point to understand here is that what about the law actually protecting the mother from coercion itself, and the
Right.
father, his rights to actually stand up for the rights of his child?
Right.
And so what's never talked about is how the pro-life laws that we are passing in these states actually don't protect the mother from coercion, because the law itself should be the thing that protects not only the child, but her from not only the boyfriend, but her from herself.
Right.
So many of these women, are pushed from so many outside perspectives and influences, whether it's financial ruin, whether it's the career advancement, whether it's, hey, you're going to get kicked out of school because your grades are falling, whether it's, hey, I don't have a place to live, whether it's an abusive boyfriend who's like, you need to kill this child or else. And so the thing that is never talked about is the fact that the laws in the books in reference to coercion only apply to violence. So hold on here. there are so many other ways to coerce a woman other than violence. And actually, the underlying laws in refusing to protect the child from her mother actually refuse to protect the mother from her boyfriend. If she simply had the law to rely on and say, I can't do this. And by the way, you can't pressure me to do this outside of violence, even pressuring me to kill someone. That's a criminal offense if the underlying law itself is a crime. So it might be true that I can't physically shove a Tylenol down my wife's throat through physical coercion, through violence, do that. But in 99.9% of the cases and times, I don't need to do that because the pressure I put on her enough to not have a roof over her head, to do all these other things, is just simply enough to get her caved because the law itself is not a deterrent. But you know what would change that? If abortion was treated as a homicide by all parties, she could say, what you're doing in pressuring me just through social pressure to commit a homicidal act is illegal, and you can be held liable for this. So I don't agree, and it's a tragedy that this is being pushed by the pro-life movement as something that, is like not pro-woman, because the law itself, in refusing to make the underlying crime abortion a law, we are failing to protect her from outside forces and from herself.
And so I agree with that. You know, and when I say I agree with that, I'm not conceding that I believe that prosecuting women is the appropriate action right now. What I'm saying is that because there are no laws, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, that because there are no laws which make abortion illegal in any sense, right? Because they don't. Like, a heartbeat bill does not make abortion illegal. Like, it makes abortion something you can go get somewhere else. It makes abortion something that you get in the mail. And so until it is actually illegal, then there's an issue. But, I bring up all the time, the brokenness, what I bring up is the statistics on mental health following abortion and statistics on suicide following abortion. And what I'm met with inevitably is, well, that's just correlation, not causation. It's correlation. And we know that women who have abortions are typically broken, right? To which my response is, so you're suggesting to me that we recognize that these women are broken and that's the reason that we're getting abortions, but rather than try to help them in their brokenness prior to that, we send them to somewhere that compounds that brokenness to the point of suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, you've been through it, like all the backtracking, and no, that's not what I'm saying. And, and just then they just
Totally
block you because they realize what's about to happen. And so, but I think that's a big deal, because I believe, as you just said, that, as men, our role is to protect, to provide, to lead, and to serve. And protecting, that includes not only protecting that baby, but protecting women from abortion. And so if you're going to pass laws related to abortion, then pro-life laws related to abortion, then they also have to protect the mother. And so I think that that's a really good point that you bring up. Another really good point you bring up that I haven't talked about in a long time. I've spoken with some lawyers who are working on some cases in different states around helping dads to be able to stop it, to stop the abortion. But is the father, and I think I probably should talk about that more. But how are we protecting, the father's rights to stop the abortion, and because it does impact them. I don't know that we've ever gotten into this, but but my personal story is that, you know, after the abortion, I failed out of college. I failed out of another college 2 more times. And 8 years later, I was at the end of a 7-year methamphetamine addiction, homeless, unemployed, and overdosing in a hotel room. Never at any point making a connection between the abortion and the destructive behavior, because I was told that it didn't matter what I thought.
Yep.
And then I was told by a school counselor who helped the young lady to waive her grades that it didn't impact me because I was a man. So that's the last thing I was left with. So it couldn't have been that, even though, you know, my life was going on an upward trajectory, and then it crashed after the abortion. No connection made until I got into treatment, and the counselors helped me to connect the abortion.
The dots.
And so that's where a lot of men are left, you know? And so I think it would be disingenuous for me to have these conversations and to not include the interests of the father, because the father is an equal part of that equation, which is why I'm in this fight. So I think that's a really good point. Let me take it to the other side, though. And I know we've already talked about your views on the difficulties of prosecuting, right? The enforcement. But just to play devil's advocate,
Sure.
When we're talking about coercion, if we have a law that makes abortion illegal, meaning what you mean by that, which is homicide, how do we go through? And has anyone thought this out? How do we go through the following scenario? Because you can get the abortion pill in the mail. Okay? How do we go through a scenario where, you know, I'll preface this by saying there are a lot of unhealthy relationships in this country. And I would suggest that when it comes to abortion, relationships are probably unhealthy at a higher rate than otherwise. So how do we get past this where boyfriend says, or husband says, if you do not do what I want, I am going to poison you with the abortion pill. And then I'm going to call the cops and tell them you had an abortion, and they're going to find that in your system. Or on the other side of that, the girlfriend or the mother, the wife, saying, if you do not do what I want, you know, just using this as manipulation, right? Which is crazy, because what we're talking about is killing a child for manipulation. However, we're already acknowledging that
that happens
that
all the
humans
time.
have been devalued.
Yep.
Right? Like the baby in the womb is not valued. And so this is absolutely a foreseeable thing. And it's probably happening. But it's not a crime right now. So the mother's saying, hey, you know, if you don't do what I want, I'm going to take the abortion pill, and then I'm going to call them and tell them you poisoned me.
Yeah.
Right? Like how do we follow that trail to prosecute? Because it's just this really weird, and I know that we can say we look at the laws that are on the books, you know, and we follow the laws that are on the books, but this is a new frontier, like, where you can kill someone who hasn't yet been presented to the world, and do it through medication.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's very important to highlight. I think the number one thing is stop making it legal for him to do so. Right. So right now he can coerce her as long as he doesn't use physical force.
Yeah.
It is completely legal for him to do so. The
Right.
laws against coercion only apply to physical force of him slipping it into her drink or him physically shoving it down her throat. Like him saying, I'm going to kick you out of the house if you don't do this. Him saying, you know, I'm going to break up with you. Him saying, you know, I'm not going to pay your car rent and you're going to be on the street. All of these things right now is completely legal because of pro-life laws. I hate to say that. I say that as a pro-life leader.
And I want to be clear, when you say that, just what you mean is because there are no laws which make it prosecutorial.
Yeah. I mean, saying I'm going to break up with you is not
Like, is it
defined as
because of
coercion.
pro-life laws, or is it because there are no laws that make it
Well,
make
because
it?
I mean, because we
What do you mean when you
refuse
say that?
to,
That's what I should ask.
because we refuse to make the underlying crime an actual crime,
Okay.
right? So if taking mifepristone is just like taking a Tylenol,
Right.
as far as the legal prosecutorial effects of it,
Right.
right? There's no distinction legally.
Yeah.
Now it might be illegal for me to force Tylenol down your throat, but
Okay.
one, is that ever going to be prosecuted? Right? Like, I mean,
Right.
what judge, what prosecutor, DA is going to look at that and say, oh, okay, give me a break, right? But but even if it does, right? Like, he can turn around and say, well, this is a legal act, And I was told by society and the pro-life laws that this is just nothing other than a clump of cells. So what I'm trying to get at is, if the underlying criminal act is actually homicide, then him saying, do this or I'm going to break up with you, makes him an accessory to homicide. Right
Right.
now, it makes him just a really
Nothing.
crappy guy.
Yeah.
Unless he physically shoves that down her throat,
Right.
he is completely absolved
Or
in
poisons
the
her.
law.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And so that's an important thing to, because right now she has no legal protections. So in that instance that you described, she could say, he forced me to do this. He said he was going to kick me out on the street. He said if I didn't kill this human being, the XYZ things are going to happen. Now she has legal recourse actually behind her. So that's the first thing we have to do culturally, I think,
Yeah.
is make it a prosecutorial offense outside of physical coercion, outside of violence. Um, and why now? Like, why are we having this conversation now? And the reason why is because this is an entirely new landscape. Right now, it used to be that the only places where babies were killed, by and large, were abortion facilities.
Right.
Now, 70% of the abortions that are taking place at home, with women with full legal immunity in all 50 states can order the pill online,
For free.
have it sent to her house, have it sent to her house, read the instructions, take the pill, deliver a dead child in the toilet, and do so in front of an officer, and it's completely legal.
Yeah.
Um, so like, that is a new landscape, and I think the pro-life movement is kind of like trying to fight this. It's like old wines and new wineskins. Like, we have to get out of this mentality that abortions are happening in medical facilities instead of the vast majority of them happening at home, and the only abortionist involved is the mom or the deadbeat boyfriend that's forcing her to do it. And so in states where we can get it done, I think the only thing that's preventing it from happening in so many states with Republican supermajorities is a lack of courage.
Yeah.
We are at the moment in so many states where we're at the point where we can set the slaves free. And, I'm just simply saying, none of these incredible men, from William Wilberforce to Harriet Beecher Stowe to William Lord Garrison to later on with Lincoln, and like none of these guys were saying, okay, let's read the political tea leaves and determine whether or not this is popular.
Right.
The only thing where they were always like, do we have the power to do it? Are we there? And so there's this massive disconnect between what we say we've been elected to do and what we're actually willing to do, which makes me think, do we really believe that preborn children have equal rights? And this is the entire premise, right? You
Yeah.
know, if I say a child has rights, if I say that preborn children have equal rights, something that every single pro-life leader would, and every single GOP, with very few exceptions, talking head, is going to tell you, preborn children, equal value, they have equal rights. None of that means anything unless we were actually willing to protect them. If I run into a tribe in Papua New Guinea that are cannibalistic and I say, wait, hold on, I hold these truths to be self-evident. You should be, you should hold these as self-evident that all men are created equal, that they have the right to life. It's against the law. You're violating my right to life. None of that means anything
Right.
unless society has a duty to make that reality so. It's not whether or not we can do it. It's like literally what I'm preaching is I do not have the moral authority to deny children the protections that are due their ontology. I don't have the moral authority to deny them those protections, no matter the actor or the tool. And it really is that simple. And if it's not, we have to start asking ourselves, what in the world do we mean when children have equal rights? If we're not willing to make that right an actual active reality when it comes down to the brass tacks.
Right. Like, what does it mean? No, I get that. Hey, let me pose one more. I know I've taken a lot of your time, but I'm gonna keep. I'm not gonna let you go yet. Let me pose one more question or hypothetical
Sure.
or example, and then after that, I'm gonna let you kind of close us out. However you want to close us out. So, what are your thoughts on pregnancy centers and how pregnancy centers
I
would be
love this.
impacted if we passed a law criminalizing abortion?
Yeah.
And so here are the ideas, and,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you've heard this before, but I'll just present it for the viewers. Here are the ideas that kind of come to mind. Number one, if someone is abortion minded, are they going to go to a pregnancy center? Is the pregnancy center become an evidence collection database for prosecutors? Do pregnancy centers then have an obligation if someone comes in, gets an ultrasound, and says, "I'm going to go get the abortion pill," to report them? How can they effectively do the work that they do? And then I'm sorry, I'm gonna add one more to it that's kind of related. It might be related, I don't know, but women who and men, but women who have had an abortion many times are the become the biggest voices in the pro-life movement, right?
Yeah.
And will we lose that? Because now, and we're the men, if today I can say, 29 years ago, the mother of my child had an abortion. If it happened, if abortion was illegal today and it happened yesterday, right? If abortion's illegal today and it happens today.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I may still want to be somebody who fights for life because of the experience that I had in my belief that it was wrong.
Yeah.
But am I going to come out and say the mother of my child had an abortion where that would implicate her in a crime? And I can't get into what my head would be then, but I can tell you that now, like I very rarely ever even bring her up. Right. I typically say I lost my first child to abortion because my story is not her story. Like I don't know. I don't know how she has dealt with this. I don't know the impact it's had. I don't know if she's gone through healing. I don't know if she cares at all. Like I have no idea. Not my issue. Like my issue is moving forward. So, but if I wanted to fight for life, I have to believe that I would still view that as I am going to fight for life and not I am here to get someone else to go to jail.
Yeah, totally. No, that's good. So, I mean, a few things I'll say to this. One, in terms of like championing the conversion of people, I mean, I'm blanking right now on specific cases in the top of my head, but how many people do we know that have, that have had radical conversions saying, hey, I was an ex murderer, I was an ex gang member. I did XYZ. I got radically saved. And now all of a sudden their, you know, their conversion story and their life of repentance is on full display, and we all welcome them with open arms, right? So fighting for justice and just laws does not mean that we're precluded from the grace of God and seeing redemption take place. Like, I mean, the Paul conversion story, right? Like, he got away with killing how many of the church, right? And hopefully none of us would say, okay, well, because we need more Pauls, we should not make killing Christians illegal, right?
Right.
And so I don't think any of that precludes redemption stories because of this simple fact, like there is no dichotomy between mercy and justice, right?
Yeah.
If some guy comes in to the church that I go to, falls down his knees, broken, and is weeping, and he's like, I have been hiding the fact that I committed XYZ murders. We would welcome in our open arms. We would offer forgiveness and healing and everything. And if the police came in, we would say, look, you are a brother, and now it's time to face, justice for what you've done, right? Because there's no dichotomy between mercy and justice. And in fact, this concept of justice is so dear to the heart of the gospel that Christ didn't forgive sinners from heaven. He actually took on our death,
Right.
right? He paid the punishment because justice must be met in order for mercy to be possible. So there we are at equal standing at the foot of the cross. In reference to the Pregnancy Resource Center thing, I would just simply reply with this, right? It is what, a class C or A felony to sell illegal drugs. It's a class maybe C felony to do methamphetamines. You'd probably be able to tell me the specific
Oh, thank God
category
I
of
never got
crime
caught.
there. Right? And so like, but what we're not hearing from with rehabs is, oh man, I run a rehab. Heaven forbid we actually make methamphetamine, fentanyl, and heroin illegal, because then we would have to just turn everybody over, um, and there'd be nobody coming to our rehabs. No, we recognize that that there's even legal carve outs in the law for these type of things, and so um, all of that doesn't preclude us from offering hope and healing, and help. And so if a woman is coming to a pregnancy resource center, she should know that in doing so, she's going to be met with help, and not the arm. She's coming to that center because she doesn't want to do that, not because she does. And so things like APR, abortion pill reversal, things like this, I'm fully, as long as we can, not create this legal carve out where women could just say, oh, I wanted APR, and do that to absolve themselves from killing a child. As long as we could work it out in the law to where um, we can have that as a legal option for women who are, maybe they're regretting it right when they take it and have gone forward and are seeking repentance from that. I'm totally willing to take those in view. But what I'm not willing to do is just simply say that because I want to do the mercy thing, that means I can't sanction the justice thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
To clarify the APR thing that you were bringing up, because I think the way I heard it, raises an interesting idea. Are you suggesting that if someone were to take the pill and then go get APR or start APR, that you are comfortable with an exception for that? I
Yeah,
don't want to put words in your mouth.
provided she gets the pill within
Yeah,
24 hours,
yeah,
provided she actually takes the pill, I would want to know that these, you know, that she's actually going through the motions, and
yeah,
like a rape and incest exception, right? Like anybody could just tick the box and say I'm raped, and you have this huge, you know, legal loophole that you can drive a Mack truck through.
right.
I would be totally willing to make an exception for those cases for women who would be, you know, in that situation where they are truly, you know, realize that they did a bad thing. They were within the time frame, sought everything they could do to reverse that decision, and at least a way lighter sentence if possible. But what I'm not willing to do is just say, you know, because we need to be a safe haven for women, therefore we should make abortion legal.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else on your position that you want to kind of close out with? I think this has been a great conversation. You raise a lot of interesting points, and I think that you have clarified a lot of things. You know, whether I fully agree with them or not, I think you've clarified them. So, so is there anything else that you want to say before we close out?
Yeah, I could just a call to action for Christians to be active in where you live. Right now, abortion is such that, you know, you are morally responsible more for the children in your community than you are for the state. We're more morally responsible for the children in your state than you are in America. We are more morally responsible for the children in America than the children in North Korea or China or Yugoslavia. Um, so this doctrine of proximity could not be more salient of a point than it is now in the legal landscape of where we are post Dobbs.
Well,
Child killing is getting um, it's at the point now where the handcuffs have been taken off the state. You know, now a state can enshrine this evil into law to the day of birth. And so it is more important now than ever before that you activate at the local level, that you do the necessary work to put pressure on your legislators to own their convictions and feel the heat. Politicians will never see the light until they feel the heat. And so my call to action to you right now, you know, if you want to get activated, if you want to fight for the rights of preborn children, if you're a man and you want to change this culture, join the White Rose Resistance. Find me, send me an email at aj@thewhiterose.life. We need to take America back city by city, county by county, state by state. And America needs to have a culture of life that values the preborn child and stops the bloodshed.
all right. AJ Hurley with the Right Rose. I will put your contact information, your email address. I won't put your cell phone. I'll put your email address in the show notes as well, and
Amazing.
the White Rose website. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think that that this has been a very helpful conversation in kind of fleshing out a lot of the perceived inconsistencies, especially in you know, what we talked about in the beginning of this, which was the abolitionists versus
Yeah.
you know, what it means to not necessarily be an abolitionist, but
And
to want equal protection.
I'll also shoot you a debate I did with an abolitionist,
Okay.
a very nice abolitionist. He's actually not on the super extreme side of the
Yeah.
abolitionist kind of meanie heads, but so you can see the juxtaposition between one side, the pro-life establishment, and the other side, the abolitionists, and where kind of Seth and I fall in the middle.
Cool. All right, man. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
God bless you, brother.